Hello and welcome to Mytech our monthly discussion, where today we're going to talk about tales of innovation and adaptation at the speed of cloud, presented by Luke Fredrickson of SonicWall. My name is Nathan Austin. I'll be the moderator today. And the challenge that I feel that small and medium businesses face is not that dissimilar to that what enterprise or large businesses face. However, sometimes terms like big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cloud, and the Internet of Things, we feel like it doesn't really apply to us. But the reality is we have some of the same problems we have to solve, whether we're a small or a medium business. So today we decided to collaborate with our security partner SonicWall, and we're going to tell some stories of innovation of how they solve some really complex problems leveraging this technology. And so I hope that the listeners and the people listening now as well as into the future are thinking about this in a couple different ways. One, in the way in which learning, just hearing the innovation and the way SonicWall solves some of these complex problems with this technology and leveraging this technology to do so, which is cool in and of itself. But conversely, also, how might you apply some of the ways in which SonicWall is solving these problems to your organization? How can you think into the future about how some of these technologies that you might not think actually apply to you that could actually give you an edge, a competitive edge, or help solve problems in the future? So we're going to talk about that today. So Luke, can you tell us a little bit about SonicWall so we have some context? And then let's dig into the stories and the problems that we're working to solve.
Yeah, no problem, Nate. Thanks for having me here today, and thanks for everyone for joining. Kind of excited to really tell everyone kind of who SonicWall is and kind of what we are doing and have been doing and what we're doing in the future to really adapt at the speed of cloud, right, as Nate mentioned. So we get started here. Really, who is SonicWall today, right? So SonicWall actually has been in business since 1991, a little over 25 years as a pure play security company, right? We're focused on providing the best possible protection for our customers at affordable price, right? We do that by leveraging many different things. And as Nate mentioned, our cloud infrastructure, right? We're going to talk a little bit about that today. Our machine learning, artificial intelligence, and how we analyze and deal with really big data. Today, SonicWall is a standalone company. We have 1,300 employees globally around the world, with offices around the world, which is, I think, is good to know because we do operate in over 150 countries and provide 24/7 threat protection, right? So we do have threat researchers around the world, always online, watching what's going on in the industry, protecting your network.
Well, the other thing today we have that is just to interject, Luke, on that is we not only say that so you have a context of who SonicWall is, but we also want to frame that, and many of us listening or future listening might not have international offices or 1,300 employees that we need to manage and work with. But I mean, these are challenges that, again, SonicWall is not an enterprise company, meaning they're not, they serve enterprise customers, but they really, they're not a 100,000 person organization. They're 1,300 employees. So they're still a mid-sized organization, maybe growing to a large organization, but they're still in the mid-sized category. But yet they're being very innovative how they leverage this technology. So again, part of it is trying to throw that in context. So forgive the interruption.
Yep, no problem. Thanks, Nate, for setting kind of the ground there. Yeah, so we are a global company, right? We do have today over 1 million systems on the internet, actively protecting 500,000 customers in 150 countries. We hold about 200 patents. And to date, in 25 years, we have shipped over 3 million units, right? So again, that kind of hopefully sets the stage at SonicWall. Even though we're a smaller security company, we have a massive, enormous footprint. And I think that's going to play into some of the stories we're going to start telling here of kind of our vision and where SonicWall has been and where we're going to with the technology, right? Being able to adapt at the speed of cloud. And it really starts with our vision as a company, right? Our vision is to provide automated real-time breach detection and prevention, right? It's a pretty simple statement, but a very powerful statement, right? We all wear too many hats during the day to have dedicated people watching what's going on your networks, whether you have a one office building or 50, 60, 70 offices that are all tied together, right? We don't have the manpower, the money to fund heads to do manual intervention, right? We have to do automated real-time breach detection and prevention. And that's really the challenge. Exactly, automated, right? That's really the challenge, right? To kind of get us started today, right? I want to talk again our mission: real-time, automated breach detection and prevention. And I hope I can assume everyone on the call here is aware of the scary place that we call the internet, right? And let's face it, I guess, right? After food, water, and shelter, we're going to seek Wi-Fi today. Wouldn't you say, Nate?
Yeah, I know I do.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's a kind of a critical piece to our life and our businesses. I'm not sure too many businesses today can survive without connections to the internet, right? And I don't want to bore everyone on the call here today. I assume everyone has seen, the recent news of companies that have been hacked and lost customer data and the outcomes of that, right? So we really don't need to touch base on that. I think we see that every single day about companies that have lost personal information, credit card information, due to many of the different reasons on the internet, right? The bad guys are getting smarter, and we're trying to keep up with it. To that point, there's getting to be more bad guys, right? Again, our 1 million sensors on the internet, our systems on the internet are really sensors, right? And the facts that we see are pretty clear, right? Cybercrime is on the rise, right? And it comes in many different forms as we just saw. In 2016 alone, SonicWall stopped 8 billion attacks on our customers just in 2016, right? And that's 22 million per day. And that number's year over year been on the rise, right? It's only growing, right? So the sheer number of attacks that we're seeing, it's growing at an alarming rate. We have to do automated breach prevention, right? We physically can't have enough human beings analyzing and monitoring all that data that comes in.
And that's, I think, so when we talk about some of these terms, which is, as we'll go to the next slide, is, for those of you listening today and in the future, this is an example of what we're talking about as far as big data. It's taking lots of data samples across it's billions of data samples across millions of devices, and at a rate of 22 million a day and growing. So this is an example of how and maybe your business doesn't have that scale, but that's what, a lot of times when people don't understand what big data means, what exactly does that mean? This is an example of what big data is. So the challenge is analyzing all that information. And so here you go, Luke, to talk about the problem that we're gonna talk about here.
Yeah, so the problem is really the sheer amount of data, and that's a good thing for us, right? The more data we can see, the better, right? So when I say data that we see, we're seeing what websites people are going to, the files they're downloading, places on the internet and the dark web that they're accessing, right? Again, those 1 million sensors that we have on the internet analyze data and all report back to our capture threat network, right? That is a global system solution of human beings and machines working together, taking in all that data. On average, we're taking in about 100,000 new bad things, right? I call bad things malware. And 100,000 malicious events, we're analyzing those in real time every day. And we take that data and write protection, right? If we need to write a new protection algorithm or signature, right, we can do that, and we can send that down to, again, our security devices placed globally around the world.
So Luke, so there's the big data question. So now we've got the big data idea. So how is SonicWall leveraging some of these other technologies to deal with the big data situation or the big data problem? Again, like you said, it's a good thing. It's a bad thing that so much bad stuff's happening and giving you so much data, but it's a good thing that we're able to leverage all that data so that we here and our individual organizations can benefit from something bad that may have been targeted towards somebody around the world. And then we're able to leverage that and apply that across the board. So can you move on to what's some of the answers to these problems?
Yeah, I think before we really kind of can dive in and understand what we do with that big data, the amount of data that we receive, and like you said, it is a good thing. The more we actually want more, the more data we get on security and what's going on the internet, the better we can have our security solutions, right? And again, we can't do that with so much data. We have to do it with machine learning and artificial intelligence, really. And those are kind of, they're scary words, right?
Yeah, that's why I want to hit on that, because artificial intelligence and machine learning, sometimes these are scary things that people don't realize that they're similar or can be sometimes synonymously used. So that's why we use both phrases today, is to say it's how do we we're using machine learning and artificial intelligence. Sometimes they're the same thing or used synonymously, but there's probably very subtle differences as far as the conversation today. But I just want to make sure that there's a little bit of a definition of, we're really saying kind of the same thing there with regard to machine learning and artificial intelligence.
Exactly, yeah, and let's kind of dive into what that really is, right? So I mean, if we just talk, computers in general today, right? They're really not that smart. All they can really do is answer simple questions, right? And typically with a yes or a no, right? But you really need a question first, right? To get an answer, right? So if we break down machine learning, artificial intelligence to the easiest form that we can, we need a question that we're trying to answer, right? Let's do a simple one, right? Is this a duck, right? So if we took hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of different pictures of a duck and fed it into a machine learning artificial intelligence program, right? All that machine in artificial intelligence is going to tell us is, yes, those are ducks, right? That's what we taught the machine to figure out, right? Find ducks. Or no, it's not a duck, right? That's the only thing that artificial intelligence can do. We haven't taught it to find any other animals, right? So that's kind of, I think, where a lot of people get confused with artificial intelligence, is they think it's really smart right off the bat, and it's really not, right? Again, artificial intelligence is really just going to ask a bunch of questions, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, millions of questions on what we're talking about here today, an image, right? Is this a duck? So once we teach that machine what a duck looks like, we can take additional pictures, right? In this case, a rubber duck, send it through our artificial intelligence and machine learning, and it's going to tell us that, yes, that is a duck. It has the characteristics of all these other ducks that I know about. Now, if we fed the machine another picture, what we know is a pig, the system's not going to know what that is, right? The answer is going to be, no, that's not a duck, right? And that's really what we're kind of doing with malware, right? Bad things on the internet, whether it's worms, trojans, viruses, you name it, right? We are feeding information into our artificial intelligence, trying to figure out, have we seen this before or have we not, right? Again, is it a duck or is it not a duck? In this case, Luke, obviously it's not a duck.
Right, the pig is not a duck. I think that's one of the things I know you and I talked about this, and really to hit home with those listening and watching in the future is that an individual machine, so this is an example of a machine learning instance, and all that one machine learning instance can do is say that it's not a duck, right? Or say that it is a duck, because we've taught it what a duck looks like, the characteristics of a duck, versus, oftentimes what the misconception around machine learning is that a machine can say, oh, that's a pig, because we know it's a pig, but that's not the case. It can just tell us that it's not a duck. So
exactly.
That's one of the differentiators to understand this whole concept that we're going into. So thanks for illustrating that, Luke.
Yep. So now that we know that it's not a duck, right, our algorithms have told us that it's not a duck, I want to know what it does, right? If we kind of relate this illustration to internet security, my goal is to stop bad things from happening on your networks, on your machines, right, on your cell phones, right, your digital devices. So I'm going to ask, what does it do? I know it's not a duck, but I want to know what it does, right? And in SonicWall case, we take this same process and ask what it does. Now we have to actually upload that image of the pig into our cloud infrastructure, right, where we have a lot more processing power that can answer a lot more questions, maybe billions of questions on that image, to try to figure out what it does, right? So that's the basics of machine learning, artificial intelligence, and how it kind of applies to us. So we can take this kind of illustration and go to a much more technical illustration of SonicWall's really secret sauce, right? This is our the way we analyze traffic, right? So it's kind of a similar thing. Instead of feeding it ducks and pictures of animals, right, we feed our deep learning algorithm, machine learning, artificial intelligence engine, we feed it data, right? And that data might be your emails, it might be your Excel documents, your PDFs, your Word documents, web pages, right? We send all that through our deep learning algorithms. And we've taught that algorithm, and it's learned over time what some of the bad things on the internet are, right? Most recently, ransomware, right? So our engine knows what Locky looks like, WannaCry, PETA, not PETA, right? Trojans, worms, right? And we can, once we identify that, we can block that traffic from even getting to your network, right? We call that classified malware, or malware that our engine has already identified. But obviously,
so it already knows it's a duck. So in this, it already knows it's a duck. So it says, exactly. All right, I know this is a duck, so I don't need to do anything more with it. It's a duck, we're going to block it.
Yep, but there's obviously
Ducks are bad.
stuff that comes out of that engine that we've never seen before, right? Again, maybe the reference to the pig, right? The unknown. I don't know what this is. It's a pig or something else, but I want to know what it does, right? Again, that's when we upload it into our cloud infrastructure, where we have massive parallel processing and can ask billions or trillions of questions on what this does, right? I'm not necessarily concerned about what you want to call it or what you want to name it. I'm just really concerned, is it going to do something bad to my computer, like ransomware does unauthorized encryption of your hard drive, right? It's not asking you to encrypt your hard drive, it just does it. We consider that very bad, right? So that's really what we're doing in our cloud infrastructure when we find something we don't know about, is really launching that software in a controlled environment and giving you a verdict, right? This is a good piece of software or it's a bad piece of software, right? And we can take that information once we figure out what it does. We can name it, if you will, and put it back into our deep learning algorithm for future times that we may see that file, right? And then that pig then would be considered classified, right? So the engine would now learn that I know what a duck is. Oh, hey, I know what a pig is as well, right? So that's our automated process of finding, really, and our goal again is cybersecurity protection, stopping the bad things on the internet. Does that make sense, Nate?
Yeah, no, Luke, I think that's great. So so can an example of how SonicWall, can you tell us an example of how SonicWall, give me an illustration of that with regard to the quantity of stuff you deal with on a monthly basis regarding looking at good and bad, identifying,
Yeah, let's take a little snapshot. I took a snapshot of the data that we received out of our engine just in August of 2017, right? Very simply, the engine identified 26,000 cases of something that we've never seen before, right? But not a duck, if you will. We sent that through our engine to figure out what it does, right? Is it a good piece or a bad piece, right? 19,000 out of that 26,000 we deemed was bad. Technically, you could call those zero-day attacks that never really hit the news or the internet to get a really big name, right? And hear about them in the papers. Maybe one or two of them, but the point is that there's a significant amount. And our engine got 19,000 new images, if you will, into classification to protect us in October, November, and moving forward. So the engine's getting smarter, right? That's the artificial intelligence, machine learning aspect of what we do. It's pretty impressive, I think, the amount of data that gets sent through there.
Yeah, and I think it's just the sheer numbers of all the data and things that SonicWall, if you're looking at over 100,000 samples of things a month, and you're stopping 8 billion attacks a year. Seeing 26,000 new on a monthly basis. I don't know if that's a typical month or not. I imagine that it probably just grows from there. But not all of that's bad. It just means you haven't seen it. But then checking, what does it do? So you identify it's not a duck, because I haven't seen it before, and then knowing that what does it do? Well, then of the 26,000 new, 19,000 of those are bad. So and then that's great. I appreciate the illustration.
Exactly. Yep.
It just help understand how it works. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, and that's the most basic level of what we at SonicWall here are doing around our automated real-time breach detection and prevention. Right, kind of the left-hand side of it shows all the bad stuff coming in to your networks. Right, the Internet of Things attacks, phishing attempts, ransomware, zero-day attacks. Right, the SonicWall solution in the middle there is doing decryption and all kinds of other things in the background that honestly most of us kind of don't care about. I just want to know if it works, right? Is it good or is it bad, right? And that's really what our focus is.
So this is a great illustration of, on this slide. I know that, again, I don't even want to get into the details of the slide, but if you look at all that stuff on the left side is an example of what big data is. This is the big data that's feeding into the center, which is kind of the machine learning artificial intelligence. So it's the big data feeding into artificial intelligence. And now the next problem is, okay, well, if how do we move? What's next? Like with regard to the Internet of Things and very good. So this is a challenge, right? So if you refer back, I don't want you to go back to the slides, but if you refer back to the beginning of the presentation, and Luke talked about how don't go back. But I was saying, if you refer it in your mind, think back to, for those listening. If you think back to so now SonicWall is grabbing all this big data, they're analyzing with artificial intelligence, And now they have to take that information that they just learned. For example, in August, we just learned there's over 19,000 new bad things. How do we now share that intelligence with the over 1 million devices they have around the world in a time that's as effective at the speed of cloud, right? And so we say that because this is a problem that SonicWall has, but really all of us listening today are in a competitive environment. We all have to compete with the world of cloud, which means that we have to position our own organizations to be able to adapt at the speed of cloud as well. So again, SonicWall is going to talk about, Luke's going to talk about how SonicWall has positioned themselves to adapt at the speed of cloud, but also then how might you as an organization apply this to your world so that you can position your organization to be adaptable as well. So take it away, Luke.
I think the best way to do that is actually tell a story of where we didn't do so well, where we actually had a problem, and how our technology and innovation helped solve that problem very, very quickly. Are you familiar with NSS Labs, Nate?
Yeah, I'm familiar that I know that they do technology testing. That's about all I know. So yeah.
Yeah. So NSS Labs is industry recognized technology tester, right? And in particular, the next generation firewall security value map. They do it every year. I think this is the 5th year that they've done it. But it's really an area where manufacturers like SonicWall can give their security solutions to NSS Labs and basically ask them to break it. And that's really what our goal of participating in these third-party testing is here's my solution, break it. And if you break it, let me know that you broke it and how you broke it so I can fix it, right? We want again, we're trying to provide the best security solution for our customers. And having third-party testing is a good way to do that. So in June of this year, this is the 5th year SonicWall's participated in this particular test. And again, we didn't do so well. So I think talking about one of our failures and how quickly we came around is a good indication of what our technology does on the back end, right? So in June of this year, NSS Labs published their test, and honestly, like I mentioned, we didn't do so well. We had great throughput. Our block rate was very respectable at almost 98%. Evasions is where we came up a little short. They actually found a method to get around some of our security with our box, with our security solution, right? And they only scored us at 27% effective on evasions, which ultimately affected our overall security effectiveness at 26%, right? If we take a look at the actual raw data, and there's a lot going on this slide. You can see SonicWall at the top there. I blocked out my competitors because today we're really here to talk about SonicWall and not kind of my competitors. But you can see for the first 4 years we participated in this test, we were in the upper right-hand quadrant, or the recommended quadrant of this particular test. In 2017, you can see we had a no, right? We didn't make that, right? And if you look at the notes, we actually failed to protect against certain HTTP evasions, right? An evasion is a method of getting around the security within your solution set. The follow-on note there is, we provided automatic remediation within 1 hour. Now, I think that's a pretty powerful comment there, Nate, that we did automatic remediation provided within 1 hour, right?
Right, and that's not just automatic remediation on the box, on the firewall, the security solution that was tested. It's across the entire solution set, across 1 million plus devices worldwide.
Yes, that's a great point, right? I assume you use some of my products in your environment, Nate, and with your customer base. I assume sometime in the middle of July, did you know we did an update, right, to protect those 1 million devices we have, or the hundreds of you guys support, automatically, right? No, you didn't know about it, right? You probably got an email saying, hey, these are what the updates that were automatically pushed onto your solution set. But being able to do that automatically within 1 hour, right? So before the bad guys on the internet, if you will, got a hold of this information that there's a way to circumvent some of our security, all 1 million devices we have on the internet were already protected from those new evasions. What's also interesting, again, we won't call out who these are. I don't really know what manufacturer this is, what competitor of mine, but I'd like to call out that they too fixed their problem, right? They failed that evasion and someone got around their security solution, but they required a firmware update to protect their customers, which isn't a bad thing. But you think of there might be a gap there of how quickly they could do it, right? You have to identify the problem, you have to write software to fix a problem, you have to test that software, and then your customer base has to probably manually go download that software and reboot their solution, maybe at Sunday at 2 a.m. during a maintenance window, for example, right? Another one of my competitors that were in the test here had to actually do manual configuration changes, right? It wasn't an automated process, it was a manual process. So, hopefully those customers had a technology partner to help them with those configuration changes, or they had to go find one. But again, there's a window of protection there, right? The bad guys know how to evade your solution, and there might be a 2 or 3 week or a month-long period before you fix it, right?
Or longer. That's the risk that I see with this is that how many people don't do it? Yeah, no, I appreciate that, but it's like it's having the staff on board if this is your responsibility to know that it's there, know how to do it. It's not going to cause any other issues or downtime. Making sure that you deploy the configuration changes and all the other things going on versus when you're talking security. I've done it now, automated, and now, right? So I think that's an illustration of what we're talking about here, and so it's cool that SonicWall positioned themselves to be able to, this wasn't an accident. They positioned themselves to be able to deliver at this level with quick automation. So
exactly, and that's kind of why I wanted to tell this story, Nate. Was we built our technology utilizing our cloud infrastructure, machine learning, and everything we've already talked about to be able to provide these updates automatically, again, within an hour. And that goes back to our mission statement of, automatic real-time breach detection and prevention, because that's really the world we live in today on the internet, right?
So I want to connect the dots, and I know you're going to show the next slides about like where you landed, but as you're, the connecting the dots between the before we went to this section, we showed the left hand of the slide was really talking about this is big data feeding all this information into the center, which is the machine learning. And now what the failure that you just illustrated and how Sonic was able to respond to that failure or adapt to that failure and resolve the problem is an illustration of what many of us sometimes don't really get what it means is Internet of Things, right? So all of the million plus security solutions and firewalls around the world are basically an Internet of Thing device. So SonicWall basically is leveraging a combination of big data and machine learning, artificial intelligence, and Internet of Things technology to be able to deploy and get the results that you see on the screen here. So I think I wanted to connect the dot between the kind of the buzzword that people hear but don't always fully really comprehend what that means. So hopefully that illustrates the kind of what Internet of Things really implies or means in this scenario.
Exactly. Yep. And then we're just looking at kind of the summary of what happened in 1 hour, right? The first line here was our initial failure on this particular test, right? Again, we were short on evasions, right? Once we worked with the NSS Labs, right? And they kind of showed us how they were able to evade it. We did the automatic updates down to 1 million devices, as Nate said again. And we came across, 100% effective on those evasions, and our overall security effectiveness, was near 98%, which is pretty good, pretty awesome. And if you're familiar with kind of these Gartner slides, NSS slides, right, the up and the right is where you want to be. So we made a significant jump within 1 hour, again, from a kind of down and left where you don't want to be, right, Nate, to the upper right where you do want to be.
Oh, that's great.
Awesome. Look, so that kind of takes me into the next story I want to tell. And it's really around a kind of a skills gap that's going on, right? Do you see any kind of skill gap in your environment, Nate?
Yeah, I would say that it's not just so in the technical space, the technology space, the industry is seeing a future skill gap. But I believe that I was actually just at a charity event that was talking about clean energy and renewable energy last week, and they're talking about in that space there's a gap of expertise in order to fulfill the demand that they see in the future. I know in the manufacturing space, many of our customers are manufacturers, and they see a skills gap going into their industry. So this problem, while we're going to tell a story of how SonicWall is addressing the problem that they uniquely face, this problem is one that we all face, and figuring out ways in which maybe some of this technology can help us with solve or at least get ahead of or try and think about or be proactive about the skills gap that we're all going to face from a labor perspective, a labor market perspective. So with that said, again, trying to connect the dots of please tell the story about what SonicWall is doing, what SonicWall is facing, but also keep in mind those listening how this something like this might apply to you.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so as Nate mentioned, I'm going to talk about what SonicWall is really doing, kind of in our forward thinking and innovation. We saw kind of a lot of our automated tools that we have today, and kind of what we're focusing on, right, to help narrow those gaps, right? So today, it's analysis say there's about 1 million cybersecurity jobs globally in 2017 that are unfilled, right? That's a lot of open positions, right? That it's on a 36% rise year over year, which is projected to hit 6 million cybersecurity jobs opening by 2019, right? And what's the gap in 2020? I mean, it's kind of scary to think what that gap is, right? It is a kind of a cat and mouse game between the good guys and the bad guys, and we need more good guys on our side, right? So we had to take a step back as a security manufacturer and say, what can we do, right? How can we help this gap? How can we help our customers narrow this gap, right? And that comes to kind of some of our core focuses on our solution sets. First and foremost, we really focus on making our products easy to use, right? Our products and our technology must be easy to use. Utilizing cloud infrastructure to deliver affordable enterprise level technology to everyone, right? Our machine learning and artificial intelligence is an example of one of those pieces that we're doing. Doing that in the cloud is much cheaper, right? To maybe your remote offices, maybe you have 4 or 5 offices, right? You can't afford to put very expensive equipment at each one of those remote offices to get to that level of protection. And obviously, we're always continuing to reinvest in our machine learning and artificial intelligence to help protect networks, and again, deploy that down to the million security solutions we have, right? And then we're always looking into, when do we need new, faster hardware, right? More software, more ways to stay ahead of the threats, because it is a daunting task. And some examples of our success there, I guess, if you'd call it, Nate, is just in 2017 alone, we've won 17 different awards in the security industry, right? For our security, some for our leadership, some for the vision that SonicWall has moving forward. I think it's pretty telling that we're doing okay, right? We're doing pretty good.
Yeah, and I want to tell a story about that. So you go back to the last slide really quick, please, because I think part of what that story tells is like SonicWall they're faced with some real challenges of managing, 8 billion, blocking 8 billion threats, getting, over 100,000 samples of bad stuff every day they have to analyze. They're dealing with 1 million plus devices in the field that they have to update in a very timely fashion, and using like the skills gap. Not only is this, and this isn't just a problem, and I'm going to use this from an illustration of what SonicWall does, but also how can we think about what we do, and everyone listening, what you do, relative to SonicWall is leveraging cloud, not just because of their effectiveness or their efficiency, because if you imagine a physical firewall needs to, it protects your internet connection. So these devices are deployed worldwide on all these different networks. Now, if the intelligence at every one of those devices had to live exclusively and completely in every one of those devices to be able to do everything we talked about today, no one would be able to afford a firewall. I mean, you couldn't, you'd basically build a data center inside of a firewall, and you can't do it. So SonicWall is not just leveraging this cloud technology, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to help them solve these problems. They're actually solving problems to enable us to afford the technology and to help maintain their competitiveness in the market space. So there's kind of a twofold skills gap problem that they're solving. They're solving their own skills gap problem, but they're also helping stay competitive and help us solve our skills gap problem, because we can't, all of us, Mytech being a technology provider as well as customers that leverage firewalls, can't afford to necessarily always keep those security experts manually updating that information. So it's definitely a significant part of, again, leveraging this technology to close that skills gap and help us all, be more cost effective in what we do. So so the innovation of how they've done it is illustrated in the next slide. So sorry, Luke, I was hoping to catch you before, because they're being recognized by their innovation, as opposed to just touting that they've done a good job. No, they've made failures, right? But even in their failures, and because their ability to adapt and the way they position their organization to adapt, they're being recognized globally for the way they're leveraging this technology and delivering solutions to their customers, which is one of the reasons why Mytech chooses them, has chosen them as a partner, and continues to choose them as a partner moving forward. So.
No, excellent. Thanks for that. I mean, I think that's the great call out is, right? Even in our failures, we see success, right? And we learn from them, and our cloud infrastructure learns from them, right? And we know how to better address these things moving forward.
All right. So yeah, let's talk about what this means to everyone on the call. So I know I've challenged you to think about how these technologies apply to you, or how can they make a difference in your business and the work that you do. But I'm also going to talk about one of the things that you can either leverage these technologies to solve the problems, because SonicWall and Mytech aren't solving all the problems for any of our customers. We're solving some of the problems. So I want to take a moment to specifically talk about some of the things that SonicWall does, and I want to ask you some questions. But some of the things that SonicWall does that that help you close the skills gap, help you focus on the things that are more important as opposed to worrying about all these security challenges. So, for example, the bullet point is, if the internet fails for your business or your organization, what impact would that have? I mean, so if it's down for 10 minutes versus an hour versus 4 hours, so what kind of impact might that have? And what if you had to manually spend time fixing that or resolving that? What kind of impact would that have, or cost might that have? I'm not going to answer that question at the moment. I just want you to think about it, because it's going to be different for everybody. Now, the other thing is, we're talking in hardware, and I don't just mean the firewall, but I'm specifically talking about the firewall, because hardware, plugs into power, and there's power surges, and hardware fails, and nothing's perfect, right? So if a physical device failed in your environment, how long would it be until you're able to return to production? Like, if you had to go down, order it from your provider, from Mytech, we may or may not have one in stock that works, that fits your needs, or we may have to go down to a store and grab one, or overnight it and then get it in place. I mean, what kind of impact might that be before we're able to get you back up and operational? And finally, really, this is a today question and a future question is, if you're leveraging the cloud today, some of these problems you can, sometimes if you're fully in the cloud, you might be able to tell people go home or go to a coffee shop. As long as you got an internet connection, you're good. But what are you using today and in the future relative to the cloud that might have an impact on your office productivity? So these are all unique questions that apply to you differently. So just think about those things. And now let's talk about, like, what are some of the things SonicWall does, and how Mytech works with SonicWall solutions to deploy and help protect our customers. Is that automatic security updates? Going back to what Luke discussed with regard to being able to remediate a problem and automatically deploy it inside of an hour. I'll tell you, that helps us keep our costs down, and you keep your IT costs down, because they automate all those security updates. The next thing is, if you have multiple internet connections, that's something that we definitely recommend for our customers. SonicWall can automate those. So if something has one of your internet connections has a problem, it can automatically fail over to one of the other ones, as opposed to having to go back and physically unplug it or physically plug it back in, or having to call someone like us or have someone technical go back there and figure that out. I know I wouldn't want to be the one to do that, but they can automatically fail over, so you don't experience the impact of that outage.
And it's not just failover. I mean, if you have a secondary internet connection, Nate, you would also get maybe more internet, right? You get two connections are probably faster than one, right? So we can use both of them at the same time, and if one fails, then we can fail over and send all the traffic through one of them. So you get kind of two benefits there with a couple internet connections.
No, that's a great point, and oftentimes one of the reasons why we recommend two internet connections is that pretty much everyone sends their backups off-site these days. So in order to send that off-site in the most efficient way that doesn't impact your day-to-day operations, is we typically recommend one of your internet connections to send your data off-site regularly, and then one of those that's your primary, which is where all your business traffic goes off. And the SonicWall manages that automatically for you, and in the event of a failure, handles that automatically as well. So, and then of course, if you choose, SonicWall has a very unique way of being able to fail over automatically in case if you have two units, and they make it very cost effective to have two units, by the way, because you don't have to pay for security services on both units. You only have to pay for it on one. They can automate the failover in the event of an outage or of a problem. So again, the key word, as you're seeing here, is automatic because it really sets us all up for success when this stuff can just be set up, configured correctly at the beginning, and we can mitigate against these different risks. Go ahead, Luke. You had some?
No, I was going to just mention one less thing to kind of worry about, right?
Oh, indeed. Yeah. And you don't have to have someone. You don't have to incur the cost of labor or of a person or the downtime of manually having to make those changes, right? There's a downtime cost and a labor cost that we're avoiding here. And then automatic backup of configuration of firmware. You don't want to manually have to make those decisions because let's face it, people forget. And so having it so that you can do an automatic backup of the configuration, because in the event of something getting corrupted or a problem or a hardware failure, if you have to manually recreate all the settings that are unique to your organization or that location, that takes time. Again, that's labor and downtime that you're experiencing as opposed to just being able to have it backed up.
Yeah. So, and on that note, we are starting to see more of, just started to interrupt there, Nate, but we are seeing a lot more kind of industry regulations where you have to back up and you have to keep track of what changes were made and who made them for regulatory compliances, right? So it'd be a burden to do that manually. So automated processes, again, are hopefully freeing up time, right?
And I think that I really wanted to illustrate that there's the two, to summarize this, is these are the things that SonicWall and the SonicWall solution does, and one of is why Mytech partners with SonicWall to deliver these solutions. But so in order to leverage, again, we're talking about things like big data, Internet of Things, machine learning, and AI, sometimes these may apply to you, and I would challenge you to find ways in which they apply to you. But one of the other ways in which you can take advantage of these technologies is by being intentional about choosing the partners you work with that are leveraging these technologies on your behalf, right? You don't always have to be the ones to be figuring out all these answers to these complex problems. It's choosing the partners you do work with that are building automation and speed of adaptation that you're able to leverage and take advantage of, such as some of these solutions that we illustrated with SonicWall. So, we're here to help. Luke is our partner, and he is happy to help as well. And definitely, like to open up for questions. But before I do, as I give people a moment to think about it and pop in some questions, and I see one coming through here, Luke, go ahead and go to the next slide. I want to just plug a couple things. We have a couple events. It's the same event, but one is in Colorado, one is in Minnesota. You can go to mytech.com/events. We'd love to see you. We're actually going to destroy a server. The reason why we got a flame there is because we're either going to use liquid nitrogen or a flame or something, and we're going to destroy a server, and we're going to be able to recover it. We're also going to be talking about some of the redundancy with regard to SonicWall as well there. So then the next, so that's an event that we'd love to have you attend. And then also right immediately after, we're actually having a launch party in both Colorado and Minnesota, where we have a movement, which is an education awareness campaign about Make IT, where we want to make IT easy. So you can also see that at mytech.com/events, where we actually are really working to educate executives and IT professionals to be able to have better dialogue around making IT a strategic part of your business, a competitive advantage in your organization, and helping automate these things so that we can really do what we do best, which is serve our customers. So finally, the only question that came out, Luke, that I saw was really about like can you go back to when SonicWall started this process? What I don't do you have any history of like where SonicWall started this idea of having to build out this massive infrastructure to be able to handle all this big data? Was this, they have always been doing that, or has this been something that they evolved and matured
for the better part of a decade? If I had to go back, I would say, I've had to take a guess, probably 12 years is kind of when we noticed the amount of data that we were collecting, and we had to go to cloud infrastructure to be able to handle the big data analytics that we were receiving in the U.S. Maybe, in the U.S. alone, SonicWall has maybe, I think it's about 38% of the kind of the SMB market, which is, if you think about that, that's where a lot of our million devices come from, which is way more than any of our competitors. So with that many devices out in the field feeding us back information, right? It was about the time, about 11 or 12 years ago, that we started to build this infrastructure in anticipation for what we have today, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's, again, to wrap up, because we just, now running against time, which is great, so thank you, is that really, SonicWall has positioned themselves with the 19,000 new bad things as an illustration that they found in August of this year alone, you had to position yourself to be able to adapt forgive the kind of cliche, at the speed of cloud, right? We had to be able to adapt. You had to be able to adapt to provide security quickly with all the data that's coming in. And the only way you're able to do that is through automation, machine learning, and artificial intelligence, and leveraging technologies like big data and Internet of Things. So thanks, Luke, for telling the stories. I hope everyone that listened today and listening in the future found it valuable. But definitely want to thank you for attending Mytech U, our monthly discussion and tales of innovation and adaptation at the speed of cloud. Luke, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Nate.